Women's Wednesday edition of the podcast. I'm Riley Woodall alongside Owen Graham and Jack Linder, Leah Blosser, our producer. We got a lot to unpack, so sit back, relax, grab some snacks, get yourself a beverage, and enjoy. Gentlemen and lady, what a whirlwind of a weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I just love the ranked matchups. I think both on the men's and women's side, it's just, I feel like there's always that one weekend where you just get like ranked matchups after ranked matchups, and you get like, we're going to talk about it, USC at Stanford, Indiana at Ohio State, just like a barrage of just great teams playing against great teams, and then ultimately just great games. So,
and on top of that, on top of that, not only so many ranked matchups, but also so many underdog matchups, and so many guys coming in the clutch, and it's just it's such a fun season, especially this year with so many underdog stories and so many upsets throughout the season, especially this year. It just seems like both on the men's and women's side, it's been the year of the upset for everybody. So it really just gets me even more excited though by the time March Madness comes around. It just it's truly madness throughout the whole year, really. Anything can happen in this sport.
Well, I was gonna say, March Madness. We're getting a little taste of March when it's not March. We're getting a taste of March in November, December, January, February. And that's really great for the sport, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Especially with women's basketball, the sport that's really growing a whole lot over even the past 2-3 years. And it's just amazing to see. And it's exciting games like that are kind of constantly going to bring more and more people to the sport to watch it. So we're going to jump into it. We're going to the monitor for our first segment of the show, the top games of the past week. I'll start with mine. Number 15, USC at number 4, Stanford, the upset. USC wins it 67-58 and hands Stanford their first home loss of the season. Juju Watkins, 51 points.
Insanity.
And a big one for me, guys, is Cameron Brink, who, like, one of the most dominant women's basketball players of our time, and certainly this year. She is on fire. She can stretch the floor. She's dominant in the paint. She's the whole package. She's so tough to guard. She was 4 of 14 from the field. Still ended up with 19 points, but 4 of 14 from the field. And that really kind of is the whole picture of what contributed to a struggle of a second half for Stanford.
Absolutely. Yeah. In the very beginning, it was honestly a strong start for Cameron Brink. Honestly, it was a very strong defensive first quarter for her. She ended the quarter with 3 blocks, I believe, 2 of them against Juju Watkins. So it's not like she was just kind of sluggish the entire game or anything like that. She came out to a strong start. But then when you just get Juju Watkins hitting every shot from anywhere on the floor, I mean, you can't even guard it then. It's so hard at that point.
Yeah, I think you just got to take a second, all right? 51 of 67 points.
Yes.
Yeah. What on earth?
76%.
2 bench points for Southern California, and only one other player was in double figures on her team. I mean, that is the definition of doing it all for your team.
Activated takeover. She activated takeover.
Yeah, she had 19 free throws. She made 17 of them throughout the whole game.
I mean,
I know a lot of teams that could really use a free throw shooter like Juju Watkins. I mean, just unbelievable.
I know a lot of individual players who would like to walk away from a game with just 17 points. Like you walk away from a game with 17 points, that's a great night.
Absolutely,
that's a great night from the floor. The fact that she did all that just from the free throw line is just insanity.
Yeah, and it's definitely 2 teams that we are going to see in their respective conference tournaments and then eventually into the March Madness tournaments. Keep an eye on both these teams. I know it's a tough loss for Stanford. You certainly don't want to lose on your home court if it's a safe haven for you. Obviously, it's their first loss at home this season, but both these teams are going to be okay, and both of them, continuing to move forward. We got to keep in mind, there's still a full month of basketball to play before we get into tournament time.
Oh, yeah.
And it's going to get even more exciting.
Yes.
So our second ranked matchup that we're talking about over the past week, number 10, Indiana at number 8, Ohio State. Tough one for the Hoosiers, a great win for the Buckeyes. Ohio State 74, Indiana 69. And the biggest thing that stands out to me, gentlemen, 23 turnovers for the Hoosiers. You cannot win any road game that you play, even if it's against Tulane.
Yeah.
And have 23 turnovers.
Yeah, I mean, that is the glaring red alarm in that game, right? You just can't have that. And especially I would say that Indiana's guards have definitely enough experience to know that they can't do that as well. And another kind of bad look on that category, 0 bench points. I mean, when you return Sydney Parrish into that starting lineup, who's going to produce off the bench for you? Because Lexus Bargesser, she's been great these past couple of games, but she's not the one to go and get a bucket at any certain time. She's more of that point guard facilitator for that bench unit. So that's definitely a glaring red alarm for the Hoosiers if they're looking at that. But Sarah Scalia, I tell you, she's been a bright spot for that team. I know.
Remember
Riley,
that name later in the show.
Oh,
Yes.
yes, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
25 points. The confidence growth from her first season at Indiana to now has just been immense.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think this just goes to show how much those turnovers mean in this game, because at the end of the game, it's not like this game was a blowout or anything like that. The final score the final score only ended with a 5-point margin. Indiana got the score within 4 points in the final seconds of that game. Yeah. So if you just cut those turnovers in half, this is a totally different game.
Absolutely.
In the end.
Yeah. And I think to Owen's point about 0 bench points, you previously in the season, you could rely on a woman like Lily Meister to go in and come in and relieve Mackenzie Holmes and get a few points down low in the paint. But yeah, that's a big problem too. Honestly, I mean, obviously the turnovers stand out, but the bench points, especially when you're going to have to really run the gauntlet in the Big Ten tournament and in the NCAA tournament, you're going to have your reserves come in and do some work. They're going to have to at least score a little bit, not even get like double-digit points, but at least get you some points to keep you in the game and keep you, just your confidence up, give the starters some rest.
Yeah.
So again, we didn't really talk a whole lot about Ohio State, but J.C. Sheldon, 25 points, Cody McMahon, 20 points.
I'll have plenty to say later. I'll have plenty to say later about Ohio State.
Ohio State is a great team this year. And again, we didn't mention it either. The press caused them some problems for Indiana. We saw that again in the semifinals of the Big Ten tournament last season. And, Indiana did an all right job beating it in Columbus, but just not good enough and forcing 23 turnovers. Again, Ohio State won that game 74-69. Our last look back game, number 2, Kansas State at number 12, Texas. The Longhorns win in, I guess you could say, kind of dominant fashion, 61-54. Kansas State, 35% from the field, 14% from 3. And for a team that has really made some noise this season, namely beating Iowa at Carver Hawkeye. It's a tough showing for Kansas State.
It was a huge week for Texas, honestly, the entire way. And I've got more that I got to say about that. But Texas led the entire way for this game, And it may not have been as dominant of a fashion as you were kind of hoping for, but as long as you can defend that home court, you defend your home crowd and everything, that's really all you can ask against the number 2 team in the country. When that happens, it really doesn't matter how great the win might be. If you can do that at home and defend your home court against the second best team in the country, that's really all you can ask for at that point. If you can hold
confidence booster. For sure.
And they kind of switched roles The last matchup, they've already played each other. Kansas State came out with a 3-point victory. I mean, and Booker, 23 points in that game, kind of a little bit of a slow showing for this time. So, for Kansas State, they've got to rebound. They've got to rebound these next couple of weeks because, that's a matchup that's when you're looking at conference tournament time, that's one that you're going to keep an eye on for maybe that title. And, who knows, maybe they may meet each other in before that, but that's the opponent to keep an eye on in that conference if you're Kansas State.
And certainly a big win for the Longhorns, as Jack mentioned, a big week for Texas. But something that stands out to me, 28 combined turnovers. It's a sloppy performance really for both teams. There's certainly, big win for Texas. Obviously. You cannot take that away from that team. But that's definitely something that both coaches are going to be looking at and saying, we can't have that many mistakes and possessions stolen away from us and things like that.
Absolutely.
Leading to opponents' points come tournament time. So that's definitely something that both teams are going to look at. But again, number 12, Kansas, the upset over number 2, Kansas State on the Longhorns home court. We're headed into our flop of the week, and I'm going to go to Owen first on this one.
I'm ready.
He's excited about it.
A team,
I don't want to be too
rude. Or a player that, just totally fell flat.
Yeah, I've got 2. I debated putting Stanford on here, which I think it would have been a little too harsh though, because they went a couple days later and beat UCLA by 20 points. So
Right.
you can't get too mad about it.
They responded.
Right.
They responded.
They responded. But a team that hasn't responded and a team that really has potential is North Carolina. I mean, Deja Kelly, again, one of those players that she's up there with all the other great players in the NCAA, but they've lost 3 straight, 2 really good opportunities that they had versus ranked opponents these last few days. And the thing that makes me a little upset, I guess, with them, I don't want to say with them. I'm not like, I'm just a guy in a podcast booth. Like,
he's not
they
mad.
don't really
He's
care.
just
But
disappointed.
they're the 3 losses put them at 7-4 in the ACC, 2 games behind. If they win all 3 of those, they're at the top. So, you know, it's hard, of course, going against 2 ranked really good opponents to try and pull out wins. But if you have that opportunity and you pull that out, you get to the top of the conference. You know, it's a really good missed opportunity for them. And that loss pushed them out of the AP poll. So unfortunate for them, a tough week for them, but we'll have to see if they're bounce back. And then my second part, we already went over it. It's Indiana's turnovers, 23. You're just not going to win any games turning the ball over more than 20 plus. And that's me being kind. Like, I would cap the number off of like 15, but Texas had 15 turnovers and they won against Kansas State. So by all means, go ahead. But 20 plus, it's just unacceptable. They drop a game in a spot in the Big Ten. Ohio State jumps them, no longer tied with Iowa. Going to hurt down the road.
And they're also running out of opportunities to bump up the resume because they've lost every single ranked road game this season. And that's definitely something that Hoosier fans are not used to after what the team did last year. The incredible run that they had that was cut short in the second round of the NCAA tournament, but certainly not what you want to see. And they're going to have one more really big opportunity, kind of their last chance to really stand out to everybody else that's looking at their resume when they host Iowa here in a few days. So just going to be interesting. It's an interesting time for Indiana for sure.
It definitely is. Yeah. My flop of the week, going back a little bit, but my flop of the week is Kansas State. Very similar to North Carolina, you know, had so many opportunities to make some big moves throughout this week, get a couple of ranked wins, but they just couldn't get it done. Now, granted, they were on the road for both of these games. They took a road loss to Texas, like we just discussed, 61-54. But then a couple days later, they take a road loss to an unranked Oklahoma, 66-63, came down to the wire for that game. But still, it does not look good on a resume right there. It's a tough week for them. But yeah, I mean, hopefully they can bounce back. I believe they're ranked number 8 now coming into this week, 1 spot right behind Texas. So it hasn't been too much of a blow for them, but I did guarantee they're definitely going to be looking to get some revenge later on in the future.
It's kind of weird with timing because you certainly don't want to start losing steam in February. But if you had to pick a time in February to lose steam a little bit and lose a couple, it would be early February because then you can start picking your momentum back up towards the late stages of February into March, and then you can really get hot and make a run.
Exactly.
So, you know, you certainly don't want to lose those games, but, you know, at least it's better than losing games late February, early March in conference, and then eventually into the NCAA tournament. So we'll switch it over to our fab of the week. So not a team or player that has fallen flat, but really shined and stood out. Jack, I'm going to go to you first on this one. What is your fab of the week?
I'm going to the other side of the Kansas State rivalry right there. You know, I'm going with the Texas Longhorns. They basically had the inverse kind of week that Kansas State was hoping to have, and even teams like Stanford were looking to have this week. You know, they're coming off 2 wins against ranked opponents in 4 days. They're coming off of a home win against Kansas State, a revenge game, by the way. They finally got that revenge after losing to them earlier in January. And then they got the home win the road win earlier in the week against Baylor, number 13 ranked Baylor, 67-55. I mean, like I said, this team did exactly what teams like Stanford and Kansas State wanted to do this week. And then they did more and then some, you know. They defended their home court against the number 2 team in the country, like I've been saying. And then earlier in the week, you know, they take care of business on the road. And basically a dominating fashion right there.
Yeah.
Madison Booker, to highlight her a little bit more, she has been leading the charge and lighting it up on the floor. She's been a big key for their success. 20 points versus Kansas State, 22 points versus Baylor. And these two wins, I mean, this just goes to show how monumental of a week it was. It bumped them up 5 slots in the AP poll rankings, and they're now at number 7.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to certainly win on the road, let alone dominate on the road. So that really speaks to the ability of this team, and definitely one that teams that are going to face in the future, they got to watch out for the Longhorns, man.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm going to flip the script, do something similar to Jack did. I'm going to go to the other side of the Indiana-Ohio State matchup. I got to go to Ohio State. I mean, jumping Indiana in the Big Ten, that's tough. That is tough. And getting, again, like you said, getting that close home win, even with all those turnovers that Indiana had, I mean, that's a huge momentum like builder for the rest of the schedule. They're riding a 9-game win streak. And I like the remainder of their schedule as well. The one tough matchup that I have before their last game that I'll get into is at Michigan State. Michigan State receiving just a single vote, but a vote in the AP poll. They're a great team. Indiana has to face them this upcoming week. So Ohio State's riding a lot of momentum. If they can take that game at Michigan State, go the rest of the way, win without a loss, they got a really good early March matchup with Iowa at home, or away. Sorry, excuse me. So I really like Ohio State's momentum, and I think they really can take it a long way.
What a difference it makes when you have a healthy JC Sheldon. That's a big time. She's such a phenomenal player. Well,
absolutely.
It'd be easy for us to sit here on this podcast and talk about, the Power 5 conferences and all those teams. We got to give some love to the mid-majors.
Absolutely.
So each of us came in with a mid-major team this week to shout out. Mine's Cleveland State. They went against Green Bay 86-63. Excuse me. It was a revenge game because Green Bay won earlier in the season, 85-72. These are the top two teams in the Horizon League. Green Bay projected the 9 seed on ESPN bracketology. So big win for Cleveland State, and they've definitely got some players that can really dish it out and do it really well for them. Specifically, Michaela Purdue, 30 points on 7 of 8 shooting from 3, not from the field, from 3. When you're knocking down 7 of 8 shots from beyond the arc, that's a dangerous player, and that can turn this team into a dangerous team.
Especially during tournament time there. It doesn't matter who you're facing at that point. Yeah, like you said, if they're knocking down 7 threes in a game, that's impressive. So that's definitely, I really like that pick. I think Cleveland State is definitely going to be one for people to at least put on their radar,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I've got an interesting matchup coming out of the OVC.
I saw this one. I was
this is one that has I feel like it has a backstory. I don't know why, but I just get that vibe from this one. So this was in the OVC, Southern Indiana 58, Tennessee State 65 at Tennessee State. Southern Indiana was handed their first loss in conference play. They still sit at the top currently. Excuse me if I say this name wrong, but Sana St. Andre, 18 points for T-State, and Shafford, who usually leads the scoring for Southern Indiana, was held to 15 points, 1 of 7 from 3 for Southern Indiana. Now, where it gets interesting is Southern Indiana still can't compete for an NCAA tournament bid because they are still in those years making that transition from Division II to Division I. So no matter what, they can't make the NCAA tournament. That would put Little Rock at the top of conference play. And obviously with the tournament, it's a lot different, but Little Rock is right behind Southern Indiana. But what makes this interesting is Tennessee State has beaten both Southern Indiana and Little Rock in conference play.
Yeah.
So I really think that if Tennessee State can string a few wins on that early side of that conference tournament, maybe see one of those two teams in the last game, hey, that's an automatic bid.
Yeah,
and,
it is.
and
I know.
it could be a little bit of surprise there coming from Tennessee State. Of course, a lot has to happen for them to, get to that point. But Tennessee State plays great defense. St. Andre has been great for them so far this season. Team to keep an eye on at the very least.
Yeah, I love how you said there's a backstory to this
Yeah,
one. I kind of felt like the Batman backstory, like the superhero backstory. That's that was good. That was good. Jack, who's your mid-major team?
Yeah, I'm staying right here in the state of Indiana. I'm going with the Ball State Cardinals, man. They just came off a home win, 97-66 against Ohio. Ohio 7th in the Mid-Atlantic Conference, Ball State at number 1. Ball State's just continuing to assert their dominance all across the board. I mean, everyone just offensive domination by Ball State with some seriously impressive numbers in this game in particular. Ball State 41.9 beyond the arc. It's seriously impressive numbers right there beyond the arc. And then 55.4% field goal percentage right there. And it's not like it was just it was just two players, putting together all the points for them, Everybody across the board was helping to contribute offensively in this game. All but two players on their roster were able to help get points on the board.
Wow.
It's Estelle Puigros, I believe that's her name. 18 points, 4 rebounds, and 6 assists off the bench right there.
Big time.
Exactly. Like coming off the bench in a big time moment right there, it may not be the biggest game of the season or anything like that, but if you can contribute off the bench like that, 18 points, that's impressive. Was on fire the entire game. And like I said earlier, Ball State is really just continuing to assert their dominance in the Mid-Atlantic right there. It adds to a 14-game win streak for the Cards, and they just continue to cement their place, like I said, as one of the best mid-major teams of the year, honestly.
It just really just reiterates the importance of depth.
Absolutely.
If you can have players that just come off the bench and just, like Riley, you said earlier with Indiana, just score like points, just produce off the bench. I mean, 97 points in a conference game. I mean, that's just dominant. You have to have that bench production, especially if you want to make it far in March.
Absolutely.
The two things I'll say about this team is, number one, the 14-game win streak. That's good. That's incredible. Not good. That's incredible. The thing that I'll say, and the only thing I'm concerned about, is are they going to cool off at the wrong time? It's the exact same thing that happened to Indiana last season, where they were dominant the entire year and then ran out of steam in the Big Ten tournament, and obviously lost that heartbreaker to Miami in the second round of the NCAA tournament. So that's the only thing I'm worried about with the Cards. But on the flip side of that, anybody that doesn't know this Ball State team or has watched this Ball State team yet this year, you need to keep an eye on them.
Chirp.
They chirp.
Chirp.
So with that, we're going to go into our look-ahead games. We're going to preview the top games of the week coming up that you're going to need to keep an eye on. We got 3 of them that are actually taking place tomorrow. I'll start with mine first. On paper, this one doesn't jump out to anybody, I don't think. But Penn State at number 2, Iowa.
Okay.
So Iowa is 21-2, coming off a 93-85 win at Maryland. Penn State, who's 16-6, is coming off a 80-75 loss to Michigan. Penn State is 4-3 on the road. They were actually on a 6-game win streak before that loss to Michigan. And despite the late lulls in games, specifically against Indiana and Ohio State, they forced overtime versus Ohio State at Columbus, and they held it really, really close with Indiana in Assembly Hall when they played. This is the second best offense in the Big Ten right now. They put up 75 points versus Michigan, and even though they lost that game, Michigan has the best defense statistically in the Big Ten right now, holding teams to 61 points, and they put up 75. And like I said, they almost beat Indiana and OSU on the road. The thing with this team is they're going to have to make the winning plays down the stretch.
Yep.
That's the biggest thing, and that's why they've not been able to get over that hump and win against these ranked teams on the road. But I genuinely think if the Nittany Lions can play it close, come out with the fire that we've seen them have this whole year, they come out, they punch teams at the mouth, they assert their dominance offensively and defensively. They're going to keep it close with Iowa, and they're just going to have to make a couple plays down the stretch. Could be an interesting one in Carver Hawkeye. My honorable mention, real quick, Purdue at number 14, Indiana on Sunday. It's a rivalry game. Indiana had to dig deep against Purdue in Mackey a couple weeks ago. It's going to be interesting to see how Indiana responds after that tough loss at Ohio State. Those are my 2 look-ahead games. Jack, you're up.
My look-ahead game for this week has got to be number 12 Notre Dame at number 15 Louisville. It's the first of 2 matchups for these 2 teams this season. Notre Dame is coming off a 3-game win streak right now, including a road win against number 8 UConn. So their spirits are high right now. It's not the longest win streak or anything right now, but if you can beat the number 8 team in the country right now, that's definitely something that puts a little pep in your step. In terms of like statistics and everything, they're 11th in average points per game with 83 and tied for 11th with the number of steals. So those are obviously going to be the 2 big factors that they try to play into more, like especially on the defensive end. As long as they can keep up with the steals and everything, the buckets are going to come for the Fighting Irish there.
Yeah.
And then, on the other side of the floor, Louisville, they're looking to recover after a road loss right now to number 3 NCSU. Again, obviously not the worst loss in the world or anything like that, but this can be the perfect time for Louisville to get a little bit more pep in their step. Obviously, they can beat a top 15 opponent, I guess I should say right now. But any win like that is going to be really good for them. They're in the middle of a really tough stretch right now, playing 4 straight ranked opponents as of right now. So this is just the second of those 4 games. So they still got some time to grow and everything like that, and really no better time than right now. So that's my game that I got for this week.
Oh, and you got an interesting one.
I've got one. I think even though it's ranked, I still think it kind of went under the radar. I got Virginia Tech at NC State. Virginia Tech right now is at the top of the ACC at 9-2. NC State is right behind them at 8-2. Of course, it's kind of a battle for the number 1 spot.
Yeah.
If you really think about it, whoever wins, takes that number 1 spot, obviously has the better record. So, it's going to be an interesting one. Both are on 5-game win streaks. Both have a lot of momentum coming into this game. So, they're not going to be anything short of there. But what really excites me for this game is there's 2 really high scoring offenses. And I think that's going to make it obviously an exciting game, but it's going to come down to the wire. Kind of like how you said with Penn State, just who's going to make plays. So I think when you have a game like that, obviously the rankings help, but with those 2 teams vying for that number 1 spot in the conference, I think it should be a really good one to keep an eye on.
Another exciting week of college women's hoops coming up. It's only going to get better and better as we get closer and closer to tournament time. It's time for Game Balls. It's player of the week for both of my good analysts right here, Owen and Jack. So interesting one. You both picked one. You both had similar ones, but you have
who else are you going to pick,
different number 2. So I'll go ahead. Owen, I'll toss it to you first. Your 2 game balls of the week.
All right, this is a surprising one. This one is I don't think you guys are going to expect this one. Groundbreaking. You ready for this? Juju Watkins out of Southern California. Just keep in mind while we're saying this, she is a freshman.
Yes.
She's a freshman. She is a freshman.
Yeah.
51 points versus the number 4 ranked team, Stanford. Did it all. 14 of 26 from the field, 17 of 19 from free throw in that game alone. It's just, you have the stats, 51 to 67 points, 76% of Southern California's points in that game. It's just extraordinary. And she lost no step in the next game, 29 points against Cal on Sunday. I mean, she is doing this game in and game out, and it's like it's not necessarily getting a lot of recognition, but averaging 27 a game as a freshman, she is the player, probably best player in the conference. I think she is the most exciting women's basketball player right now, and I know there's one
there's
a
one
lot
in
of people
particular.
like, but. She's just extraordinary. I mean, she has done so much for that team. I mean, the 51 points is just a cherry on top. Just amazing season.
In the words of Gus Johnson, when Cardale Jones was carrying Ohio State, the whole state of Ohio is counting on Cardale Jones. The whole state of California is counting on Juju Watkins. Jack,
absolutely.
You also have Juju on your list. So anything to add to what Owen said?
I got to piggyback. Yeah, I mean, it's just like you said, it's an astounding, incredible performance that I don't think people are realizing just how unfathomable it is, especially as a true freshman in this team. Like you said, 76% of USC's total points were scored by Juju Watkins in that game against the number 4 team in the country. Now, this is the exact opposite of that Ball State game that I was talking to you about. Basically, this entire game was Juju Watkins. Only one other player had double-digit points for the team, and 2 other players scored, and they scored just 2 points. I mean, that just goes to show how absolutely dominant of a performance this game was. Juju Watkins ended the game with the ball, and then as soon as that buzzer hit, she just turned to her teammates, and everybody just stormed the court for her. Like, just everyone was so incredibly happy for her, and she's finally getting her flowers, I feel like, now, and it's just incredible to see. Such a talented player.
Juju Watkins gets a game ball from both analysts. Owen, I'm going back to your other player of the week.
Now, this one is really just, I mean, it's kind of, I don't know how to say it, but the word that comes to mind is special, because JC Sheldon for Ohio State, injured last season, only played 13 games, went down early on in the season. I mean, the bounce back that she is having is just something that has to be recognized. If there was like a national comeback player of the year or something like that in like the NFL, like for the NCAA women's basketball, hands down, 100% JC Sheldon. It can't, I mean, there's no one else. She's played in all 22 games so far this season. She's averaging 17.9 points per game. I feel like this team was so great last year, but now with her on the floor, I think it's really unlocking the full potential that this Buckeye team can be. With that win over Indiana, I mean, they really could make a run to dethrone Iowa. Of course, we're looking at that last matchup in the Big Ten season when Ohio State goes to Iowa. But I mean, it's JC Sheldon on another level this year. She increased her point average even by like sitting out most of the season last year. She's just been amazing for Ohio State, and I think she deserves my second game ball of the week.
That Ohio State-Iowa game could determine who wins the regular season title in the Big Ten Conference, assuming that Iowa wins against Indiana in Assembly Hall. Jack, your other game ball.
Yeah, just to hark on that real quick, though. Yeah, not only that, it's crazy to think that the Big Ten could really end in the 3-way shootout. If Indiana can come up with a win against Iowa, and then as long as Iowa can get a win against Ohio State, that's a 3-way tie for first place right there in the Big Ten. That's just super exciting. My second game ball of the week, I feel bad because I'm kind of harking on Kansas State this entire show, but my second game ball of the week is going to go to Oklahoma's Skylar Vann. She put up an incredible performance against Kansas State. Again, number 2 team in the country. You know, she's a senior forward, puts up 21 points, 8 rebounds, and 3 assists in the victory. Not only that, but she's just been a major part of the victory and the team's success as of late. I almost put Oklahoma as part of my fab of the week. I'll put them as an honorable mention for this week, but they're having a good little run right now. You know, they're on a 6-game win streak. The last 6 games, though, for Vann, just individually, 20.6 points per game, 7 rebounds and 3.5, or 7.5. Yeah, 7.3 rebounds and 3.5 assists. I wrote that wrong on there.
Wow.
But yeah, it really just seems like when she plays better, the entire team plays better. Like I said, team's on a 6-game win streak. They're first in the Big 12. And as long as she can keep up this momentum, as long as Vann can keep that momentum, this Oklahoma team could potentially be a threat by tournament time. So they're ranked 24 now coming into this week.
Yeah. Wow. And definitely something that you want to see when a special player plays well. She not only plays well for herself, she elevates her teammates to play at an even higher level. That's the dream of a coach, right? That's definitely something that will definitely help them down the line. Keep an eye on that team with the last couple months of the season. So it's time for everybody's favorite segment. That's becoming a fan favorite anyway. It's time for Shot Clock.
Let's do it.
So each of us are going to get 30 seconds. I'm going to time it on my phone here. You have 30 seconds to rant about anything and everything that you want. So I'm going to go first. 3, 2, 1, and starting the shot clock now. Put Sarah Scalia on WNBA draft boards, people. Do it. She's Big Ten Player of the Week this week, averaging 16 points per game, 44% from 3, and an 87% free throw shooter. She's also become a lot more diverse on offense. She's able to score not only from beyond the arc, but inside. Her drives into the paint are a lot better. And on top of that, her defense has taken a massive step from last year to this year. 21 steals, that's second on the team. Shot clock is up, and
28 seconds right there.
There
you go.
Pretty solid. Got the shot up. Oh, and you're going in 3, 2, 1, go.
All right, I've got to talk about the Caitlin Clark hype. I mean, I'm sorry, but you have national media. You have a top 10 matchup between Iowa and Indiana, and the entire graphic is on Caitlin Clark. I mean, the disrespect. I mean, let's get it real. Now, this one really upset me. After the Stanford game, Watkins being interviewed by, I don't know who the sportscaster was. Why is Caitlin Clark mentioned in that interview? It was comparing Juju Watkins to Caitlin Clark. I'm going to go over time, but I don't care. I don't want to get this. I don't want to get this wrong because Caitlin Clark is an amazing player. I mean, she is going to break that scoring record. I mean, she's done amazing, but the media has got to start paying attention to these other players and these other teams that are also doing great things in the world of NCAA women's college basketball.
And time is up 54.
Just under 2 shot clocks.
That was close.
It's all right.
He
got a couple percent. His team got the rebound.
Exactly.
That's what we're saying.
I had a rap solo in high school choir. I feel like I should have done a lot better. So I'm kind of upset
You're
about that.
passionate about it, though.
Yeah.
There you go. And you know what? I'll go ahead. I'll give you a few more points there. Go ahead and start the clock
Jack,
there.
And you're going.
Yes, the grief is not at all with Caitlin Clark when it comes to that situation. She is 100% deserving of all the hype and praise that she's received. She's unquestionably earned it. The grief is with the broadcasters because there's so many amazing players and so many potential storylines. Going back to that Indiana Iowa game, the storyline could have been Indiana looking for revenge against Iowa after getting knocked out by them in the tournament, you know. So the supporting cast needs more spotlight throughout the broadcast and each promotion for the game. You know, so many great players out there.
Time. There
I think
you go.
count that. You guys did so well.
I'll count it. Like, shut up.
I had 3 points on my graphic, and I took 54 seconds. Jack has a whole paragraph, and he gets it through 3:30.
Hey, Owen.
Oh my goodness.
Hey, man. It's a long semester, and we're only going to get better at this. But here's the thing.
Like you said, you got the
rebound. You got to
there.
thank your teammates because they got the offensive board for you. There you go. So
That's true.
You had a little bit more
That
time.
is true. That is true.
Well, that's going to do it for us this week. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Riley Woodall with Owen Graham and Jack Linder. A big shout out to our producer in the studio. You can't see her right now, but Leah Blosser locking it down both on the live stream and as well as, you know, just the audio recording and keeping us online, making sure that we sound good. So much exciting content on the way this semester. We'll be back on Monday for another edition of the Men's Monday Show. You've been listening to the Flop Warning Podcast. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody. God bless.